So welcome to the November 2023, it's already November, webinar for Language Dynamics Group. So this is the free webinar, not a training, um, but it's specifically about this month, something that is very close to our hearts and that we engage in. It's one of, our values and a part of not just who we are as researchers, but um, how we hope to help bring about the mission that is part of our company. And so I'm going to go over what research to practice or research practice partnerships or RPPs are. And then I'm also going to kind of talk about not only like how to start one, but just in general, like some considerations if you are interested in doing research and you're a practitioner, professional, how do you get started? So without having to go back to school and get your PhD like I did, um, how can you implement or do like what's called practical action research already within the setting that you're working in? Or, what do you want to learn how to do? So just a little snippet. For those of you on here, you already know this, but Language Dynamics Group, we are a company where we provide research-based and what I would like to consider research informed assessment tools, interventions, and then also trainings to help professionals, whether they're educators, clinicians, parents, other researchers, utilize and help support learners' language development, specifically everything that goes into what true reading is or reading comprehension, right? Also, our products assess and then help supplement writing instruction through text generation. That's, another area of research that we work in. So that all students, we say preschool and primary grade, but that's the curriculum level. Clearly, our products can be used now with the Cube, the third edition, goes all the way up through 8th grade in terms of benchmarking and understanding where students should be with those grade level expectations for reading. So that's word recognition, like the word reading skills, word level skills, the ability to read, and also the ability to understand what it is that you just read, right? Or comprehension side or language comprehension. So preschool all the way up through grade 8. Story of Champs as an intervention is used with anywhere from preschool up to adults. Now, as a curriculum or a tier 1 program, so if I'm a teacher and I want to implement this program because I might have been letters trained, but like I have tools like OG or I have really great tools, let's say, for teaching like word recognition skills that are in the Scarborough's rope strands. But where's the explicit, systematic, and sequential like tool to teach the language comprehension strands? And so that's where Story Champs comes in as a tier 1 or like a whole class program. That's for preschool through grades 3. So we have aligned the content and the lesson plans with standards that go up through 3rd grade, which might be, I feel like, year 3 or year 4. I always get confused if you're in Australia. Then the screener, we have the Pearl, so that's a kindergarten, end of preschool year, so entering kindergarten and the beginning of the kindergarten year. It's a universal dyslexia and DLD or developmental language disorder. It's a screener to identify students who are at risk for those things and is predictive, 6 years into the future. So if you're identified as being at risk, most likely 6 years in the future, we were right. That you do either have or both DLD and dyslexia. So we have something new coming out. I did not put it up here. It's called the Diamond, and that will extend. Basically, it's going to be diagnostic. We've been doing research, finally have it ready, and hopefully pre-orders this month, November, in a few weeks, to have that ready to go out in the new year. So that will more information about the Diamond will be coming out in January. So a little bit about me. This, that's my personality. So I have a PhD in behavior and community sciences from the University of South Florida, master's in special ed from the University of Virginia. Both are in the United States. I am the director of dissemination and implementation programs for Language Dynamics Group. And through, my research, but my prior history that's not in here is that I was a teacher for many years and then worked in schools and in group homes with adults, well, up to like age 22 as a therapeutic consult, as a behaviorist. And so I also did early intervention, you name it. But I did that for many years, and it wasn't until 2018 that I went back to get my PhD. And that was because I did not have the tools and didn't even know how to get started or that it was even possible to do research, right? Like I wanted, not only did I want like a doctor with my name, that's always been something I've wanted without having to go to med school, but yeah, no one told me that you just can like hook up and partner with some kind of research organization or a set of researchers at universities. And they would have loved it if I had reached out to them when I was, director of an outpatient organization for therapy for autistic individuals or Down syndrome. They would love that because I had the means and the capacity to make those decisions. In the school setting, I would have loved to do research, but that's where things get a little bit political and messy. So I didn't have the capabilities of making those decisions, but wish I had been asked. So that's kind of what has me super interested in this topic tonight, but also so is Trina, so is Doug. And so the two of them, they are the co-authors of Story Champs and The Cubed and Pearl and Diamond, these assessments. They're also owners in Language Dynamics Group. And so, we've got a disclaimer that if they were presenting, they'd have to disclaim it. So they do make financial incentives or whatever the ASHA disclaimer is that because these products are now for sale, that clearly if we ever had a profit and it was huge, they would get something. So great, Amelia. I am super excited that you get to go to sessions. I will be working a booth. You can come get some free goodies. Come say hi. And I am not presenting this year. But that's okay with me. So the two of them, good friends, that's interdisciplinary work that they do together as behavior analyst and school psych background. Trina is now at Juniper Gardens. And so that's at KU, University of Kansas. And I would like to say, like, we're very proud of her for getting that position, just like with Doug being the chair in the speech language pathology department at University of Wyoming as of this year, or maybe it was like, maybe it's been 2 years already. Super proud of him, and then she just recently moved there, so in 2023. So she started this past fall. Cool stuff going on there. Implementation, research, practice partnerships. We'll get into that a little bit later. Now, the problem. So when we talk about why is research needed, we could answer this anyway. I don't know if you have worked or you do work in organizations or at schools or districts where maybe the best practices and what we know works isn't being used. Maybe like I was just in a school district recently that I'll be like I showed up and it turns out that I wasn't allowed to use the phrase science of reading. So that was quite a surprise. I don't think they knew who I was and what our products are and that they're based in the science of reading, but that's okay. I have to quickly change my language so that I don't get booted out and maybe we can make some in ways without calling things what they are. That is a problem. So what is happening in schools where maybe they're using balanced literacy, 3 cueing methods? I'm not going to mention specific products because I don't want to get sued or I don't want LDG to get sued. But you can look them up. There's a whole podcast on Sold a Story, or it's called Sold a Story. It's published by American Public Media, so APM, and New York Times, tons of articles. So really the problem in schools that are still using this are multiple things. At the administration or like systems level, so research terms, systems level change that needs to happen. There have been districts that have invested millions and millions of dollars that just can't admit they don't have the humility, the leaders in that district, to humility to say, oops, maybe we're wrong, it's not working, so we're going to try something new and stop using these products and these programs because there's no research not done by those researchers or those publishers, really, um, that truly show the long-term effects that these things work. In fact, it's detrimental. So you've got that going on where it starts at the top, and we all know this, but then you've got this other thing that's happening that can reinforce the administration's behaviors, in which teachers or users of programs may not understand the science behind the programs, but they like it. Like it's pretty, it's fun, there's songs and dance, and they find it engaging. Now, in that particular case, if I came into your classroom and I said, well, we're going to stop using this and I want you to use this thing, and it's not pretty and it's not like equivalent in terms of engaging, fun, allows me to be creative as a teacher. It's systematic, explicit, and sequential. Like what nerdy, scary words that we use. Yeah, I'm going to be resistant to change. No one likes change anyway. So, if I'm going to put forth the calories and effort, you better tell me why it's going to improve my life. Not just, it's always for the students. So, like using that excuse of, well, it's for the students, doesn't work. Obviously, it's not the money why I'm in the classroom and I'm a teacher. It's not the money, it is for the students. So that comes across as patronizing. So people really dig in, right? And you keep using things, we keep doing things that don't work until somehow we finally hit a brick wall and we're like, well, I wonder why we're doing this. That goes all the way back to the research to practice gap. Somewhere, somehow, there's this research stuff that's not getting disseminated appropriately. And that's on folks like myself, who are researchers who don't do a great job all the time. Maybe we're using jargon, of communicating our research findings and doing so in a friendly manner that's not patronizing, right? So I'm putting forth this thought, right, that maybe we could do better as researchers, but I also want folks who are in the practice or who are practitioners, who are in the professional side of things, who are supposed to take what it is that we do and then implement it. I want you to understand what goes on and why there's this huge delay. So it's over a decade. It used to be 17 years, they said. I think it's down now, and that was based on medical interventions. So that's shorter probably because of medical interventions. Might still be 17 for education. But it takes a very long time, over a decade, from the moment that there's this conception of this idea, a problem is identified as a researcher, and you're working in teams. It's never one person. Be wary of papers with one author. That's suspicious to me because no one works alone. So you've got this idea, you've got this problem, you want to solve it, and so you're going to investigate a way to solve this problem. So let's say it's a story champs. So Trina came up with this in her dissertation, and with Doug's help, and that's the clock starts ticking, right? And so you're doing these preliminary studies where you've got the research question, you've got to design a study so that you can show it's effective. And studies are expensive, by the way. So if you don't have money, you're really working a lot slower because you don't have the staff to hire, right? You're doing a lot of it on your own. You're making your own materials. Trina and Doug, Olivia, who's Doug's wife, Olivia Peterson is our graphic designer. So from the moment Story Champs was going, we had these great icons that, everything's copywritten now because it works. But that's like way, way back when, right? And so the preliminary test, and then there was a first study with Spencer and Slocum, right? But that was with students with autism or autistic students, and it was using Story Champs individualized, like those one-to-one lesson plans. We can't just go off and publish and put this out, right? Story Champs as is, we have to make sure it works with more than just those 3 kids, or 5, I forget how many there were in that study. So more money is needed, right? We have to also make improvements based on the results of that first study, and then use the first study's results to ask for more money, and then bigger studies and bigger. So now you can see like there's this whole pipeline where they're constantly trying new things out and piloting it, and then the studies get bigger and more expensive. So we got to write a grant that takes a while to find out if we want it. If we don't, try to get by and try to figure out how to fund the study that we've designed and really want to do. So you're talking about years. I also want to point out that even if we do a research study, let's say with Story Champs, for example, I'm going to pull one up. I think I have one right here. Um, so here are some examples right here. So this one right here, large group narrative intervention and Head Start preschools, implications for response to intervention. Okay, this was done. Look, Trina was at Northern Arizona. Doug was at, oh, he was at University of Wyoming at that time. Came back. This was published in 2015. I'm going to go ahead and point out that it takes about a year sometimes to get studies published because you're going back and forth. The reviewers think it's too long. They want more pictures. They want you to take stuff out. They want you to add stuff that now makes it too long, and now another reviewer says to cut it. It's a nightmare. By the way, if we want you to be able to read it too, we have to come up with like anywhere from $2,000 to $3,500 US dollars to make it free so that you don't have to pay for it. So no, when we get published finally and we were going back and forth, we did all the work, we make jack. So we're not making any money by publishing research, like at all. We don't get anything for it. In fact, we pay after it's been approved. We're not paying to get it published, but after it's been approved, we pay to make it free for other people to read because that's open access and that's the like gold standard. But you can imagine early career researchers, someone like myself, Trina made my first paper free. Just a good mentor like that. But we're starting a language dynamics group, in fact, for the first time, I think, recently, with do I have one of the papers here? I don't. The first study that came out for the Story Champs curriculum that is coming soon, probably in the next year or so. We'll be able to produce those and publish them. But we've been studying it for a while now. And so the first study to come out of its effectiveness, we finally paid to make that paper free. So I hear there may be Informed SLP is going to be reviewing it. I heard. Don't hold me to that. You can ask them. Anyway, so I just kind of want to like think about this. You've got this whole timeline, you've got money involved, money is always involved. And then great, you get this awesome study, not ours, but let's say you get this awesome study and you're reading it and somehow you're able to understand it. Your eyes don't glaze over and you're not falling asleep. And you go to try it out in your own practice. Well, 50% of the time, 50% of the time, if not sometimes more, it doesn't work like it says it's supposed to, or you're not able to implement exactly how the procedures were implemented because the researchers did the study. Like they did it in a center, or they did it at the university, or in a clinic, and you work in a school. And they're the ones that made the intervention and came up with the assessments, or this is all they do. So the noise, there wasn't a fire drill in the middle of what it is that you're trying to do. Yeah, so there's also those drawbacks where unless the studies actually have included the people for whom this intervention was designed for, chances are, and then it's implemented in a context that's similar to when we're supposed to implement it if it were to go to print, yeah, it's not fair. So that's what takes the pipeline even longer because feedback comes from practitioners to researchers saying this isn't feasible or we don't like it. So yeah, just another thing to think about. If you have any other thoughts about why that I did not mention, there's a gap, please share them. But it's kind of depressing. So research to practice partnerships. I say research to practice. Research practice partnerships. There's the hyphen. Same one and the same. Now, the researchers and the practitioners are more than just like one group. It'd be more than the users of the intervention. It's usually some other entity, or it might be a community stakeholder, it might be multiple people. But the research team tends to be based in a research center. So like the RAND, R-A-N-D, the RAND Corporation is one. And so that's all they do is just research and publications. They have cool tools. So if you don't know about them, check out their website, and not very much related to, literacy and language development, but sometimes there are studies, school shootings, all these other things. But their graphics are great, so they do a wonderful job at dissemination. But they work closely with professionals to get that feedback and make things more user-friendly. So there's a partnership that goes on there. For the purpose of talking about tonight and how Language Dynamics Group, how we use and utilize research practice partnerships, um, it involves establishing a good relationship, a working relationship that has to be mutually beneficial between us. Like, yes, we want to try out something new. But we need folks to come from the field to say, hey, we have this problem. Can you help us solve it? And then at that time, we might say, yes, like, in fact, we have this new intervention or we have a curriculum that we want to use and test at tier one or like the whole group. That would be a great opportunity to do it, right? Or, hey, we have this, you come and you're like, hey, we're having trouble really diagnosing students in older grades 1 through 8 without bias, right? So there's a significant amount of bias in a lot of our static assessments that we use for dyslexia identification. Um, you know, can you help us create or modify our assessments that we're using? Come to us. As researchers, Trina and Doug, at the university level, also I work for Mary Baldwin University on the side to teach. When you've got a connection with the university, you can put the business like aside a little bit and actually help people. So as an implementation scientist and intervention designer, myself, Trina, and Doug, we do consult outside, but more through our universities. So if that's ever a concern, you could reach out to. I'll give you my email later. Or I'll go back to the slide where it was provided. But in general, with Language Dynamics Group, usually, ideally, we are approached by folks to say, hey, we have this problem. And they may have in mind, like, can you do a story jam study? Because what they get out of it is free kids, right? But the mutual beneficial part of it, so mutualistic, and the long-term side of it is great. Well, yeah, we can help you, but here's what we need out of it. We need to have a large-scale randomized control trial, which means, some schools are going to get story champs, and then other schools aren't this year, but they will next year, and we will be around. We're not going to do the study next year, but we will be around to train them and make sure that everybody gets a kit, right? That's going on in Michigan in several school districts, thanks to Maureen's. I'll see her in a little bit. But Diane, I'm forgetting someone too. I have to look at the authors. But these are folks who are in administrative positions, right, with school districts who see the value in these partnerships with researchers and universities, but mostly the relationships with the researchers, because we move around to different universities. And then that way, it's reciprocal, right? So there's an intention. We focus on the problems that are important to that particular school district or school or classroom. And we adapt, modify what we have, and we're not trying to force our intervention on people and convince them to use it. I don't really like the term buy-in. It seems, I don't know, there's a connotation that like I know it's best and I'm making you buy into what I'm selling versus I don't know, if you don't like it, then I need to figure out what it is that I need to change, right? And maybe sometimes in the context, research and doing studies is just it's not a good time, right? So the whole purpose, again, is when you look at it, it's to create a new practice, to capture existing practice, try to figure out what is going on at this time. There are researchers who just solely look at like observational studies, like here's really cool studies. We use this in some of our trainings, but there are studies where they do language samples of teachers and how many causal and temporal subordinate clauses are teachers using, complex academic language, relative pronouns when they're talking, right? And that's an observational study. That's just to capture what's going on now to then inform, ooh, we have a problem. They're using a lot of that complex language, and unless we are, and here's the change, unless we're actually systematically, explicitly, and using a sequential like curriculum, like a really good intervention that's grounded in research and the science of reading, to teach those things, because academic language can't be picked up automatically. It has to be explicitly taught. And how many of our kids, especially those with developmental language disorders, are missing out on instruction just orally? That's not even, it gets worse, by the way, when you put them in front of a text and it has all that language. Never mind tier 3 vocab, these science books. So That's also research that can be done. So if you ever have questions of like, yeah, I'm curious, I have this research question, that's one of those things that you can reach out to us. Me, I can help you formulate that. Anybody wants to present a poster at ASHA or any of their professional conferences, like this is what research practice partnerships do. It's mutually beneficial, especially if your districts pay for you going to conferences because you're presenting. If you ever need help asking for money, let me know. And then the intentional improvement, right? We're not just willy-nilly like, well, let's come up with something cool now that we both want to do research. It has to be of value and immediate impact for the people who are in the setting where the research is taking place, right? Who are implementing the interventions or collecting the data. It has to be relevant to you. Otherwise, we call it in the behavior analysis field response effort weakens ML, meaning the more effort I have to do, which is data collection, being trained, extra hours that I might have to do to report the data. Dr. Kirby has questions about the data I submitted to her, so now I've got time after work, because I definitely didn't fit it during my day. So that's response effort. So KCALs. My motivation goes down if the reward or the outcome isn't equal to all these things that I'm doing. And if you're going to make my job or my life easier in the meantime, whether it's saving me money because I have this cool assessment that I get to try out or use, or you're doing reports for me based on my assessment results and you're providing those recommendations to me, I get free training. Some of those things, if they aren't equal, then your motivation is weakened. Like you're less likely to do something. So that's kind of where that improvement has to be intentional, and we have to talk about rules. So research practice partnerships occur, like there's tons of history of this in medical, social work, criminology, juvenile justice. There's tons of well-known published centers of research that for research practice partnerships. In terms of education, less. So we're always new to stuff. If I'm talking to any behavior analysts, oh God help us. That's a really, really new term, an interdisciplinary collaboration, but even between SLPs and BCBAs. We're still working it out. But coming back to this, sorry, I got sidetracked. But coming back to it, it's not an educational or therapeutic thing. So when we're starting to form, relationships, we have to look at, okay, where am I wanting to affect change? Like the problem that the practitioner is coming to me, the professional is coming to me as the researcher, they might just be a teacher who's in their classroom and they have permission from the principal. They might be a grad student. They want to do research using their own access to their own students. And I might be like, yeah, but we can come up with a grand scheme and we can do the whole school. Yeah, that would be really inappropriate of me because it has to be based into what the capacity of the individuals are. In terms of a therapeutic type of where do we want to see the change, it's not necessarily educational outcomes, academic language. I don't need to see like a community impact. Like this is, guess what, 1 in 3 students can't read at a basic level by 4th grade. That's not even proficient. That's based on National Assessment of Educational Progress results in the United States. That's a community intervention if we can all like work on reading, like in reading comprehension. But for therapeutic ones, centers, clinics, hospitals, homes, the community, and we'll kind of get into this too. Now, how do you find a partner? There's a term that Alonso and colleagues, and I'll show you some references later, but Dr. Alonso is in San Diego and is the lead author on this paper with a bunch of really awesome people. And they use the term, which is also common, called knowledge broker. So the knowledge broker is a person that you like meet. So if I'm a researcher and I met you at a conference and you're like, yeah, let's do research, and we follow up and we actually have meetings and then we talk about it, and turns out we do find something. Usually it takes months of like intermittent emails and like trying to find time to meet. But that's just the one person that you make that first connection with. And then that person usually puts you in touch with the powers that be that could approve a study, whether it's in a specific setting, like if I'm a speech pathologist and I have a caseload and there's like 3 kids, I want to do a small group intervention with story champs, or I really want to test out the diamond, the diagnostic dyslexia and DLD tool that's coming out. And for us, we need data, right? So we need normative data, or we need to know if it's feasible for use. How long does it take you? Um, those kind of things. You would be the knowledge broker, and then we would obviously go find the powers that be within your system so that we're not getting you in trouble if we do decide to move forward with research, right? Um, the problem is, right, if I do have this classroom or like unit level, so it might be, again, it could be in your resource room or it could be a special ed classroom, it could be in a clinic. It's a small impact. So basically I'm testing out something, but like it's a small population. I can't make the assumption or in the paper that we both write together, because by the way, a true research practice partnership involves the partners being authors, not just the researchers, right? So we're publishing, we're doing research that is just like a small N is called, you know, N of 1 designs in the medical literature, or single case in our educational and speech language pathology and related behavior analysis in that kind of research world. Now, let's say I want to level up and I tried something out and it works for a few kids, but I'm pretty sure it's going to work for an entire classroom. That's awesome. But now I'm involving training more people. I probably need more help collecting data as a researcher, so now I have to hire research assistants. If not, then I need to basically train everybody in that school how to be a data collector and how to also be an interventionist. That's a really good practice. So, by the way, when you're looking at research and you think something an intervention is cool, you want to make sure that there are at least a few studies that include, more likely than not, the more recent studies that are solely interventions implemented by people who actually work in that school, right? So not the researchers going to the school, not the researchers going to the school to collect data, like it's all done by people in the school system. So that they might be administrators, they might be interventionists, they might be SLPs and teachers, all of them. It might be graduate students who are interning and shadowing the speech pathologists or teacher interns. Whatever the capacity is that the school has, that's what we want, because that's actually probably going to more closely match the effects. So if it says it's effective in that paper, it's probably going to be effective in real world because it was under real world circumstances that they got effects. Versus, yay, another article where a researcher did it and like it worked. So, but that's usually a single case because we're just piloting or testing it out. Districts, oh Lord. That's why research practice partnerships take a long time to, one, form, and then two, you want them to keep going so that you have the trust and you know each other and you've got relationships. You know the capacity. I could have a principal or actually the district administrator that says, yo, this year is just awful. We had so many teachers leave. So we're just like, can we put that study on pause? That would suck for me. But this is a relationship that I have, right? And so we would probably try to adapt, adjust, modify, our original plans. And sometimes if it doesn't work that year, it doesn't work. So, but this is, I actually would want to continue research because that's just how things are these days with high turnover. So, other contexts, I've done studies where the intervention was implemented in the home. We had a publication that came out this month on use of family engagement activities, FEAs, and what is the cost benefit, cost effectiveness analysis, not benefit, cost effectiveness of using them. How much does it cost to have, and it was for dual language learners or bilingual students who spoke Spanish primarily at home. That's their primary first language, or L1, and then they were being instructed in both English and Spanish in their preschool. So it was a bilingual program. So Story Champs was implemented in both languages in the preschool setting, and we only sent home activities in Spanish, and that the parents did, right? And so did it affect any of the tests and assessments that we did at school? We interviewed the parents, did they like them? How many did they do? And so it can be burdensome to them, right? And sometimes it's intrusive. Sometimes people don't want you in their homes or they feel very uncomfortable. Absolutely should feel uncomfortable. It's weird to have people in your home who don't belong there. I used to do home therapy and oh, the amount of fights between caregivers and you just got to like pretend you're not there. So awkward. Um, but again, you are also addressing things that impact that family or that child's everyday life, and probably more hours are spent not in school than in school. And so you want to think about long-term outcomes. That would be it. Community and centers and clinics. Um, so community, look into Juniper Gardens research. Like these are projects, implementation studies where we're looking at things, not, sorry, researchers, not LDG, but there are researchers at who are part of the Juniper Gardens or the bridging the word gap. Um, so anyway, that consortium, they do a lot of community research, such as like trying to set up storybook reading corners in laundromats and looking at, the positioning of the bookshelves, of what kind of books, the carpet, the environment to be conducive to that, and is it even effective? So if we videotape, how do we measure it? We have to create a measure of engagement. Super cool stuff that's going on. And that happens a lot of places, but they just have they're just really good at it there. And then again, centers clinics. So we have a study under review. Um, Here's another example of like how long it takes to publish. We have a study under review. It used a research method that the journals um, just didn't like. Probably anyway, I'm not going to get myself in trouble. But anyway, it's still under review. We're going to have to find another home for it. And we implemented story champs with autistic students in older grades. So I think second grade was like the youngest. And we wanted to look at like, okay, we always hear that it's hard to fade out visuals. Well, what happens if, what modifications can we do to the regular Story Champs lesson plans and how long does it take to affect change? We get change as little as 6 sessions for writing outcomes in small group Story Champs lessons. And like that's been published. So that's a pattern that we see. But with our autistic students or students with autism, I mean, it takes a little longer. And so we wanted to find out what modifications can we make. The older the students, what about different linguistic profiles, their vocal and verbal capabilities? What are the things that, for whom does it work? For whom does Story Champs work? So that's been 2 years now, maybe 3. So that goes to show you, it'll look like it's published in 2024, but know that the study was done. In fact, I think it was done right before COVID. So that would be like 4 years previously. And those are the things that rarely get reported. We do, but sometimes they have to get cut, whatever. So question, be a skeptical scientist. Question, kind of, when does the study take place? Now, Crystal Alonso and then her colleagues, right, this study came out, and I feel like it was in a ASHA journal or speech pathology, but I'll look at this in a little bit. They put these key ingredients. There are 5 dimensions, research practice partnership dimensions. That is not theirs. So that is from a 2013 study, not by them, by another researcher. I'm all over the place, y'all. Sorry. So Coburn. But they went ahead and like expanded or elaborated upon this, kind of like the Scarborough's rope, where it's just categories. And what we've done is like added more information about what those categories mean. Similarly, and this is even important. So what they looked at is your first dimension, that you have to make sure that your partnership has trust and that you've cultivated, these relationships. It's not just a one and done, right? So I told you, you identify and contact these knowledge brokers. So whether that's you or someone else, you do trust building, you engage in correspondence back and forth, open communication, you've got meetings, you document these things too. This is important. And then also you want to make sure, so it says honor each partner's knowledge and needs and commit to both research and practice goals. You want to make sure that there isn't too much of an imbalance between who holds the knowledge, because then they're going to have the power, right? And there could be coercion. So I've seen that before in researchers who are like, will take advantage. And there is some questioning of a colonial research practice where who tends to be the people that accept most of the help? The poor Title I, low income, usually a minority population in that general area, usually inner city. Um, yeah, come on in because they are under-resourced, right? And they're understaffed. Well, are we taking advantage of that because we know that they're going to say yes? And I can tell you there's probably several researchers who specifically only study those populations because they know they are going to say yes. So there might be an overrepresentation of, let's say, um, students of color or just diverse students who don't meet this this overall like white Anglo-Saxon, primarily English speaking or only English speaking, non-Hispanic, that don't meet that demographic. Um, yeah, we might be over-identifying kids of color in our research because it's easy for us as researchers to get them to participate. So you want to make sure there's not a huge gap, but also on this note, I need to be able to learn and have questions and want to do better as a researcher. So I don't want to have all the knowledge either. Otherwise, I'm going to be terribly bored and probably not going to visit sites very often. If you don't see your researchers very often to come and check in or they don't talk to you, want to know how things are going, means they're not interested, which means they think they know it all. Also another problem. Um, but then you've got conducting rigorous research. So that really relies on the researchers who have the knowledge of, okay, here's our research design. We have to do a randomized control trial. When I was a teacher, I'd be like, oh, whatever, okay. Or they might say, we're gonna have to do a single case design. Definitely would have said, I don't know what that means when I was teaching. Behavior analyst, I would have thought I knew what that means, and I still would have been wrong. Because in research it's very different. So you rely on the researchers who have the tools, the knowledge, and the resources, like the time. Their job allows them. It's like when I'm in the schools, it doesn't allow me to do this. Their job literally is to help create data sheets, right? To set up spreadsheets for data collection, to help create PowerPoint slides, to do fidelity training. Goodness, like that's their job. May have multiple of these projects going on, they may whine about it, but that is literally their job. And so sometimes it's great for school to not have to come up with those things because they wouldn't have time. And that's why a partnership also works. Um, then you've got things like soliciting feedback. So let's say I did create this tool or this data sheet. Well, I should be checking in to see if it's working, or is it a piece of crap because it's double-sided and no one flips over to the other side to fill out the rest of the information. So if you use our cubed, like our assessments, our language, you'll realize that they are only one-sided, even though they are very visually aggressive. There's a reason they are one-sided. It's because we know people don't flip them over. And that's all based on feedback and observation studies and iterative design. How do we support the partner practice organization? So basically, we should be working on things that are a priority for the partners, and researchers should support that. Even if I kind of want to go over here and study this really cool research idea, it really is a priority for me to help that school first, or that district, or that partnership, or that clinic address their research interest needs first. Then we've got things like, all right, so we did the study, how do we get the knowledge out there? So how are we going to look at the data? What does it mean? How do we interpret it? And then how do we share that? And then from that, the fifth dimension is capacity building. So I want to work myself out of a job, but intermittently, I should be checking in and seeing how things are going. Like we were contacted, I think Trina was contacted not too long ago. And this is right into it. Not too long ago, a follow-up from our Michigan partners who wanted more of the Story Champs curriculum. No, it's still not available on the market. So she sent them what little, like, think a few kits that she still had that were like research beta testing, because they liked them so much. And so this is the long-term results. This is the relationship that you can reach out to someone and go back and forth. Or let's say that we want to test the curriculum. We are working on another grade level. We would be reaching out to them again because there's this mutual back and forth. Potential barriers that I think are worth mentioning, language, jargon, even the word jargon. We have to have people understand the same language. So We also need to make sure that the practices that we're doing are acceptable and feasible, not just effective. They should be effective, but also, like, if no one likes using it, they're not going to use it, no matter how effective it is. So what a waste of time for all parties. And then expectations, like who's doing what, right? If implementation fidelity is poor, like teachers aren't, who's checking, who's going to follow up, who's going to provide that follow-up training. Especially as a researcher, if I want to be hands off, I need to make sure that someone is designated and they know what to do. Also, this happened with Maureen, our research partner in Michigan. When she was there, she broke her leg. So I think skiing or something. Yeah, what do you do when she's out and she's the administrator for the district who is supposed to be leading the study for these districts? You're going to have backups. And then last but not least, people, personalities, there are always conflicts. So what do we do when there's a breakdown or as soon as we identify there might be a problem? Other practical considerations, the capability. When I say that, I mean, are the people on all sides able and willing to learn from the professionals, or do they think they know it all? Because that does not make a partnership. Um, are they collaborative? Do they have the capacity, like time-wise, or are they like so overwhelmed that they're going to start this project and then not be available? That would also stink. Or they only send their research assistants, and that's all you talk to. That might want to question that, right? So who is it that that's capacity. All right. Then we talk about practitioners. So do they have the knowledge? Are they capable? Do they have the time, right? Resources? Do they want to learn? So do they have the knowledge to basically implement what this changes or to come up with a new intervention or to study? And if not, are they willing to learn and to maintain that and do those things as a partner? Not just, as out of kindness, but if you want authorship on the paper, then we should be mutually engaged in this research to some extent, or, kind of divvy up the roles that traditionally just fall under researchers, right? And that's a colonialistic practice. Resources, both like how are we implementing things in practice and during those professional days, and also what are we going to do about time? Are we documenting it? How much time is taken up outside of work? And then are people being compensated for that? Yes, time, which also equals money, but time is sometimes more valuable than a $5 gift card to Starbucks. And then recognition. Some people do want to be an author on a paper, and like that would have been me. I would have been like, yes, I'll do anything for that because I would have thought it was that. I still think it's super cool. But recognition of like all that hard work, it's not, I don't need a gift card, and I will make the time because that means something. So the motivation, we have to know kind of what drives people and what do they want out of it. So these are a bunch of, there's a QR code in the right-hand corner here that just presents a lot of research. We're going to update our summary soon, but it's for the Pearl, it's for the Cubed, it's for Story Champs. We made infographics, which is a part of dissemination that we owe people as scientists to make it easier, because who has time to read all these? But I'm going to show you and point out something that is really cool. This is a snippet. This is like not even a fourth of our research of Story Champs. I'm going to show you and point out something that can help you understand to the extent, if you do come across articles, is this article the result of a research practice partnership? So the authors, usually in order of the amount of, you identify who's going to be first author, and that's the person that kind of takes the lead in writing the paper and getting it submitted, deals with the journals. Usually, sometimes they do it alphabetically. Now they'll have a little letter, sometimes number about where this person is located at the time of print or the time of the study. And so Doug was at BYU. You're going to see Maureen here, Maureen Stokowski. So Maureen, and you look at the B. There we go, Macomb Intermediate School District in Michigan. So when you see things like this, most likely there is some kind of partnership between universities and a practice setting or context or organization. And Maureen is one of those like unicorns who has just been a huge like asset to us in the research that we do. And then, I mean, yeah, it's she's been wonderful. She's since retired, but like that's kind of where you can look at the authorship and see, oh, yeah, they actually did partner with, some practitioners and know that this actually was implemented there. This paper was published last year or the year before, and you can get that if you go to that QR code. So I mean, if you're interested in any of this research, or you're interested in, you have research questions of your own, that's kind of where the first thing, like, I am curious, I wonder if, that's where you start. No matter who you are, whether you're a researcher or you're a practitioner or you're a parent, you just have a question, and it's not going to be pretty. You're not supposed to know how to formulate, like, I hypothesize. Um, you have to have curiosity. You have to want to learn and want to know and want to explore that. Now, whether you have time and stuff, keep that out of your mind. Like, put that aside, think that thought, and let it go. But if you are curious, you're bound to at some point try to make time or find resources to get that question answered. That's when you can reach out to us, and specifically, like any of us here. You can email training@languagedynamicsgroup.com, or you can actually email me, and I'll throw this back up again, megan.kirby@languagedynamicsgroup.com. And you can just say, I'm curious, I have this question. It's specific to my students or my clients. I've noticed this pattern. For example, I recently have noticed a pattern that kids tend to not understand words like, or phrases like how often and when, like on the cubed assessment. And I don't know why. I think COVID and like not understanding time has something to do with it, but I haven't had time to like formulate how to go about measuring that, right? Like, so I have a list of research questions that one day hopefully I get around to. Um, if you have those, let me know. If you want help to try to think if it's feasible to even study, or maybe connect with someone who can help you research it and study it or give you tools. That's what we're here for. If you're interested in being a partner with Language Dynamics Group, we have really cool stuff coming up. Like, we're going to need some school districts to investigate the effectiveness of some of these other grade level curricula for Story Champs curriculum that's coming out next year, just to verify that, yes, it works in kindergarten and first grade. So what about other grades? I don't think we need preschool anymore. I think we've got enough studies at preschool level to know it works. So we're going to need partners, but we're going to need districts. So we're going to need some knowledge brokers to help us make that happen, and then talk about what's in it for them. If you need a certificate of attendance, here it is. You can scan it with your phone. It will take you to a survey, and then fill out that survey, and we'll email you almost immediately a certificate. If anything happens to that, like you spelled your name wrong or the date's wrong, just fill it out again. That's all for me. I hope that, I don't know, maybe inspired you learn some random facts, but I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your month and holidays if I don't see you in December. And yeah, keep in touch and let me know if we can help you.